What's up, you guys? Welcome to the channel once again. It's Reels Fan. Today we're going to talk about what's an emergency fund. I'll post an article real quick right here. What's an emergency fund? Emergency fund is money set aside to cover future financial surprises. This means like right now during this illness that we have going on, there's a lot of people with no work. So there's no income coming up. So these people who had emergency funds are like set for the next couple of months because the emergency fund should cover 3 to 6 months of like your expenses. So people who had emergency funds are not getting as affected as bad as others who didn't. People who did not have emergency funds are the ones who are getting hurt the most right now, are the ones who are really need the help from the government. They need food stamps, they need the unemployment, they need like everything possible because they did not think about having an emergency fund in place because they did not know this virus was going to happen or this illness was going to happen. So emergency fund is just something that covers your monthly expenses for the next 3 to 6 months. This should always be set aside and not money that's been touched. It's like a savings account, and you guys should have this like in a high savings yield account, like Allies Bank or something like that, because you're earning interest on that, and it's like money that you do not know when you're gonna use it because these expenses that are gonna come up are like they don't tell you when they're gonna come. So that's why you need an emergency fund in place so you guys could be well off for the next couple of months. So that's what's an emergency fund basically. So let's go on to the next point. The next question that you guys might be asking is, how much money do I need for my emergency fund? Honestly, this varies person to person because each person has like the amount of expenses per month. Like me personally, my expenses are very low. So if you compare my expenses to probably your expenses, my expenses are way lower. So I'll probably need less money for my emergency fund because I have less things to pay for than maybe that you have. So basically, how much money do you need? It basically depends on person to person and how much expenses you have for that month. So let's say you have like a total of 1,000 that you have to pay per month. That includes your car payment, your phone bill, or just like a little bit of rent that you paid. So your total expense is 1,000. So if you have 3 to 6 months of expense, the least you should have is 3,000 because that'll cover you for the next 3 months and you'll be well off the next 3 months. If you lose your job, if you lose anything, or like an unexpected event like this illness that came along. So now if you want to have an emergency fund of 6 months, you're supposed to have 6,000 because your expenses per month is 1,000 and you have expenses for 6 months, so half a year. So you should be pretty good if you have 6,000 because no matter if you lose your job or no matter what happens, like pretend they cut unemployment, you have no income, like pretend they cut everything off and you have no money at all no more. You have your emergency fund, so this money should keep you well off for the next 6 months. And within that 6 months, you could apply for jobs and hopefully get one. And then you could just save that money that you didn't use. So pretend you had 6,000 and you're gonna use 4,000. So now you have 2,000 extra, and then when you get that job, you can slowly build up that expense back up to the 6 months that you originally had. So basically, how much money do you need in your emergency fund? It depends person to person. It depends on your expenses per month. So this is why I recommend you to track your expenses down and know how much money you're spending per month, because this really helps on tracking down how much money you need per month, or like the emergency fund, how much money you need for that emergency fund that you should have in place. Every American should have this in place, but like my next point, I'll talk about how many Americans actually have an emergency fund. It's quite shocking and it's quite sad to me. So let's go on to that point and let's talk about it. Although an emergency fund seems kind of obvious to have because no one knows what's going to happen. No one knows if you're going to keep that job, or no one knows when this second wave is going to hit or when the first wave was actually going to hit. No one expected these type of events. This is why an emergency fund is really good to have in place. But honestly, about 7 to 10 Americans, out of 10 Americans, only 7 have an emergency fund. So 7 out of 10 people do not have an emergency fund in place. That's quite sad because even if you go to like any other country, the people who have emergency funds in place is very low. Like the average is like 28% of people have an emergency fund in place. So this means basically like if they lose their job, they have no money at all. Like they're done. Like they're completely broke. Like this is sad because then eventually they can't pay rent, so they're gonna have to get kicked out, and then they're not gonna have somewhere to stay at, and they're gonna just lose everything. If they have a car payment, they're gonna tow the car because they're not making their payment. So honestly, this is quite sad because only like 28% of the people worldwide have like an emergency fund, and that's kind of like sad in a way. And I'm pretty sure I'm not accurate on the 28%, but the normal is really low, and that's the main point of this. Like not that many people have an emergency fund in place, even though it's quite obvious. People just do not think about the future. They just think like, I have my job right now, I have a steady income, I'm gonna be set for the next couple of years. But in reality, people do not know what's gonna happen, the unexpected events. No one expected this virus to hit this hard and cause a global shutdown. This is why many people are getting like effect to it, and this is why many big companies are going bankrupt too, because they just have so much debt and they can't pay it off no more because they have to shut down their airlines and stuff like that. So this is why emergency fund is very important. Let's go to my last point. What happens to these people who do not have an emergency fund? They have no income at all. So what's their next choice? The next choice is to get a credit card if they did not have one yet. So they're gonna apply for a credit card. Most likely these people are desperate, so they're gonna apply to any credit card. So they're gonna get into a high interest credit card, which is already like they're affecting themselves even more because they already have no money coming in, and then you have to pay like a 15-20% interest on a credit card that you really did not need in the first place. You could get a better credit card anywhere else. So they're gonna apply for this credit card. They're gonna get a decent size limit depending on their previous income. They're gonna do that. Now they're gonna just start swiping and swiping because that's the only way they could pay for stuff, because they don't have no other income or other way to pay their things for. So they're gonna probably max this thing out, and then they're gonna get in trouble because they're not doing their payments. So now what this is causing is they're causing banks to lower down credit card limits to certain individuals, because these banks are noticing that during this pandemic, people are not paying down their credit cards. It's like a high percentage people who are not paying down their credit cards. So banks are trying to prevent themselves from getting screwed over. So what they're doing is they're lowering down the credit limit. So pretend you had a $10,000 credit limit. They're probably going to lower it down to like $5,000, $6,000 if your bank decides that you are not like capable of paying all that limit down if you have maxed it out yet. But this is what banks are doing. Like they're just trying to prevent themselves from like going to a deep hole, because they're not really winning money right now either, because people are not paying back their credit cards. So what banks are doing basically is that lowering down the limits. So if you guys like the video, please hit the like, subscribe with it, and comment your thoughts down below. Follow me on Instagram, financial_reels. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe button. See you next time.